7 years ago, I had an interaction with a GP that changed my life forever. It's the summer of 2017, and I'm walking up the stairs to the top floor of my doctor's practice. I've been coming here nearly every week for the last 4 months, but not to this floor. I'm hoping that I can find the answers here because I just cannot cope anymore. I get to the top of the stairs, and I sit on one of the 2 empty seats, and I am desperately trying to control my anxiety. I'm sitting there, staring at the notice board on the wall, reflecting on the last 4 months. It was 4 months ago in this exact practice that my doctor gave me the diagnosis of severe depression, caused by a chemical imbalance of the serotonin in my brain. For those 4 months, I'd gone against my gut feeling, and I was taking the antidepressant prescribed to correct my serotonin levels. My GP definitely cared. She gave me a regular appointment so she could check on me. That's why this practice is so familiar, but not the top floor. The door opens, and I'm invited in by Keith, who's the therapist I'm going to be working with. We step into this bright room and sit on 2 comfortable green chairs. Keith's voice is calm and reassuring, and he starts by asking me what I want to work on. I am stumped. I thought he's meant to give me the answers. I reply by asking, how have I got depression? I'm not the kind of guy that gets depressed. I'm doing well at work. I got loads of mates. I play football at least 3 times a week. But there is something wrong with me, and I want to know what to do. I am honestly so confused that my attempts at self-medicating with beer and football weren't working. Keith asked me to explain what I mean by having something wrong with me. I feel ashamed, but I reckon I can trust this bloke. So I tell him. Every night, when I put my head on the pillow, I can feel my heart pounding. And with every beat, it pushes this anxious energy up into my head until I am absolutely wired and I can't sleep. Then the next day, I struggle to get out of bed. And when I do, I can't focus on anything. I often can't even finish my own sentences. It's that bad. I'm scared I'm going to have to quit my job and move back home. Keith seems to understand, which settles me down, so I trust him with more. It's horrible. I often come home, so I'm alone and lock myself in my room, and I cry. I normally can't cry, but when I'm this depressed, the tears just come, and I cannot stop them. That's when the voice in my head starts. It tells me that I'm not good enough. It tells me that I'm a failure and that I always will be. It tells me that everyone will be better off without me. Why have I got depression? Why have I got this chemical imbalance? And why aren't my antidepressants working? Keith reflects back, and it's clear that he gets how tough things are for me. He tells me that I need to make my own informed decision about the pros and the cons of antidepressants, that I certainly shouldn't just stop taking them, and if I make any changes, I need the support of my GP. Before we finish, he recommends a couple of books that he thinks might help. I have never read a book cover to cover in my adult life, but I am determined to do whatever it takes to overcome my depression. That night, I'm sitting in my room and I'm reading one of the books I'd picked up from the library on my way home. Before I knew it, I was 60 pages in and several Google searches deep. And I am stunned. I don't know what to feel. How did my GP know that I have a chemical imbalance? No bloods were taken, I wasn't given a brain scan, and no genetic testing was done. I let it sink in. And then it dawns on me. The most amazing thing happens. The hope that I'd lost suddenly started to return because I could now see that this might not last forever. I keep reading, and I commit to the therapeutic approach. I finished all of my allocated therapy. I joined the free group therapy that my GP organised for me. I even stopped numbing my pain with alcohol and instead reinvested my beer money into private therapy. Now that was one of my better decisions. Fast forward 12 months. I'm sitting in my last therapy session and I have made huge changes. I've handed in my notice at work, I've booked a one-way flight out of the UK, and I was about to step into the uncertainty and chase my dreams. I'd even had a vision of a service I could create to help other people struggling with depression. I'm sitting there talking with a therapist and telling her how passionate I've become about mental health. I'd realised that the label of depression didn't tell me anything about why I was depressed. But reading, speaking more openly and committing to therapy helped me realise that there was a clue in the title all along. To depress means to push something down. In my case, it was clear. I was pushing down huge amounts of anger, shame, and sadness. I've been depressing these emotions for most of my life. And I created these I reckon clever is the wrong word. I created these complex ways to keep them contained. Rather than share my shame and say that I don't feel good enough, I'd work hard to prove that I am. Rather than show any anger, I'd people please. And rather than show sadness, I tried to be confident and funny. These defense mechanisms weren't serving me anymore, and I made the decision to work with the depressed emotions instead. I left the therapy room and I was walking down the street in central London when I had another revelation. That for most of my life, I'd seen my emotions as something that I had to fight. I even let myself be convinced that they were a medical disease. I just wanted to get back to normal. But my normal was the problem in the first place. But it was clear now that there was a way through depression. But to heal, I had to find a way to feel. Being given a medical explanation for my diagnosis had a number of negative consequences. I want to talk about the two that I found the most difficult. The first was that it gave me a way to avoid looking at the root cause. But there's so much research challenging the view that depression is a medical disease. In 2020, the British Psychological Society argued in their Understanding Depression report that it's more helpful to see depression as a human experience rather than a disease. Then 2 years later, a team of researchers conducted a huge review and concluded that there's no evidence to suggest an imbalance of serotonin causes depression. Now, I definitely felt depression's biological effects on my body, but the explanation I was given blurred the lines between the cause and the effect. It'd be like having a greenhouse plant, and all of a sudden the leaves start to turn brown. You wouldn't label that plant with brown leaf disorder and spray paint the leaves green. You'd look at the root cause. How's the soil? Is it getting enough light or does it need more water? The brown leaf diagnosis would divert your attention away from what's really going on. In the same way, my depression diagnosis distracted me from the real reason I was in pain. Something in my gut didn't feel right, but I didn't trust myself, and I went down the medical route anyway. As humans, we don't want to feel pain. I avoided it in so many ways. I overworked, I drank, I kept busy all the time, even if that meant scrolling on social media. I'm sure you've got your own ways that you use to avoid your emotions. And yeah, sometimes we need them. But my diagnosis of depression became another tactic I used to avoid my pain. Why would I feel my emotions if my depression was a problem in my brain? Why would I look at past events if my genetics alone made me this way? And why would I open up to others if my depression was the result of having a disorder? Without even knowing it, I was using my diagnosis to bypass my emotions. But the second and the most devastating consequence that I found from being given a medical explanation for my depression was that it completely robbed me of hope when things didn't improve. Every time we increased the dose of my antidepressants and it didn't work, a small part of my hope was chipped away until I had no hope left at all. Depression is incredibly serious, and it can even be life-threatening, because one of the most dangerous things that we can do to a person is take their hope. I now question my decision to take an antidepressant, but I am not questioning yours. Please hear that. But I wonder how many of the estimated 8.6 million people prescribed an antidepressant in England last year were also told the chemical imbalance story. I believe that everyone's experience of depression is different, which is why I'm skeptical of quick fixes. For some people, there might be practical things they can do in their lives, but for others, it might be more complex and require a broad toolkit and a mix of support. So what did my prescription need to be? I needed to change my career and the city that I live in, to visit difficult events from the past and have difficult conversations with family and friends, to learn to feel my emotions so I can hear the messages they're trying to give me, to improve my sleep, exercise, and nutrition. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. I needed all these things, not just one of them. How could I expect my GP to know that? I didn't even know that. And if I'd have carried on seeing my depression as a chemical imbalance, I may never have known that. But now I do, because I trusted myself enough to find what was right for me. Having done all the above, I now see that my depression was an opportunity for growth, because it's given me the things that I value the most in my life. Things like deeper connections with my friends, where I can truly be myself and feel accepted. My amazing partner and a relationship that would not have been possible a few years ago. And finally, building the service that I dreamt of during my darkest time to help other people experiencing depression. I am honoured to be doing this with some incredible people, including the brilliant clinical psychologist, Dr. Gillian Bowden, MBE. To conclude, when I first went to see my GP, I just wanted to get back to normal. But my normal was the problem in the first place. The solution to my pain lay within the pain. And without feeling, there was no way of healing. There are people out there who really need support, and we cannot take their diagnoses or medications away, especially if they haven't got a viable alternative. I'm not standing here telling anyone how they should be living their life or coping with their pain. I hope that in hearing my story, you can go away and make your own informed decisions. It's your experience, and it's up to you how you relate to it. But for me, when I stopped bypassing my emotions, I found new ways to heal, and I regained the hope that I needed to keep me going. So to finish, I want to ask you one last question. Was my depression a medical disease, or was it a human experience?